think we can start, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody to today's second Cabinet meeting of January, second Cabinet meeting of the year, both those that are participating and those who are watching on the live stream. If members have technical difficulties during the meeting, please contact the Democratic Services Officer on call who will attempt to assist you. On call today is Katie Brewer. Her number is 577046 and it will also be at the top of the chat thread for members if you need it. For those of you who are watching via the Council's YouTube stream, please follow the instructions below the video if there are any issues with the live feed. I'd ask participants, when you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone listening into the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I will then make a note and go back to you once the person speaking has finished. Please note that we'll be following the usual Cabinet protocols in which other members of the Council usually only speak once on each item. Everyone present, please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and they're not used to make or receive calls while the meeting's in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business and ensure that you're in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. The meeting's being live streamed for members of the public. It will also be recorded and subsequently be made available on the internet. Can I ask members of the Cabinet to confirm that they're present in the meeting when I read out their name? I'll also ask for the attendance of those councillors who are participating in order to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 separately. Councillor Whitehead.
Present.
Councillor Alban.
Yes, here, Chair.
Councillor Duckworth.
Here.
And Councillor Yates.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Now, at the moment, the only councillor I've got who's asked to speak under Council Procedure 20.1 is Councillor Pugh. Are you here, Councillor Pugh?
Yes, present, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other members who want to speak under Council Procedure 20.1 tonight? Doesn't seem so. Okay, thank you. So there are no apologies for absence. Do any members of the Cabinet have interest to declare in the items of business on the agenda this evening? Thank you. I'm not seeing anything, so we'll take that as a no. The minutes of the previous meeting, the Cabinet's asked to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the meeting on the 14th of January, a copy of which is attached to the agenda pack. I'll propose the minutes. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Thank you. Unless I hear any objection, I'll take these as approved.
Sorry, Chair, can I interject you? You were not at the meeting, so it would require those who were at the meeting to propose.
Oh, fair enough.
I was at the meeting. I'll propose.
Thank you. So I'll have to go back to this again. So who's proposing? Sorry.
I'll propose.
Proposed by Councillor Duckworth and seconded by Councillor Whitehead. That is a very good point, Charles. Thank you for pointing that out. I must admit, I'd forgotten I wasn't at the meeting. Okay, we move on to item 4, which is Capital Works Programme 51 to 57 High Street, Margate, and that is Councillor Duckworth, please.
So Cabinet is being asked to agree to permit the expenditure of the allocated budgets for the agreed capital project to renovate 51 to 57 High Street, Margate, to give delegated authority to the Director of Regeneration to negotiate and agree the contract documents, and to give delegated authority to the Director of Law and Democracy in consultation with the Director of Regeneration to sign the contract documents and any other necessary documents to give effect to this decision. The Council has received a grant payment of £750,000 from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government for a capital project to commence immediately. The 51 to 57 High Street, Margate, former Marks and Spencer site was identified due to it being in the Council's ownership and being in a key high street location. The recommendation in this report is for a key decision to approve to commit and spend £750,000 of external funding to deliver this capital renovation project for 51 to 57 High Street, Margate. The projects will include a replacement roof and scaffolding and soft strip out, including safe removal of asbestos and services. The project is externally funded by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and is required to be delivered within the set criteria and restrictions of the Towns Fund programme. This follows a recent decision to include the £750,000 funding to the Council's Capital Works programme for 2021-22 and forward plan. An application for listed building consent for the replacement of the roof was granted on the 21st of January 2021. This was required due to the facade on the Cecil Square side of the buildings being Grade 2 listed. The buildings involved are included in a joint venture with Homes England. The works will be subject to formal approval being received through the joint venture, permitting the capital works in accordance with the terms and conditions within the agreement. The capital works will be procured in line with the Council's open invitation to tender route, led by procurement, and officers are working hard to deliver the project in a timely manner. This project will enable the vision for the building to be more clearly defined in line with any repurposing of the High Street and Town Centre. It is proposed that the building could form part of a portfolio of assets in a new creative land trust that is proposed within the Margate Town Deal Town Investment Plan, submitted to the Government on the 11th of December 2020. The proposals within the investment plan form part of the discussion with the joint venture partners. This capital project fits strategically with the Council's corporate priorities and values by supporting inward investment, promoting sustainability and growth of local enterprise. These works aim to aid the economic recovery for Margate, contributing to the delivery of the Margate Town Deal and the Levelling Up agenda. Delivery of this capital project will lead to reduced repairs bills due to water ingress to the structure and mitigating asbestos-containing material management, representing potential revenue savings for the Council. I therefore propose the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. I'll second that. Any discussion, members? Not seeing any discussion. In that case, is the members minded to agree the recommendation? Any dissent? Everyone's agreed. Thank you. So that's agreed. Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Moving on to item 5, which is Statement of Community Involvement, Review and Public Consultation. And that's me. I can find the appropriate document. So, the Statement of Community Involvement, the SCI, is a statutory requirement which sets out how the Council will consult on planning policy issues, planning applications and neighbourhood plans. The SCI was originally adopted by the Council in 2007 and a reviewed and updated SCI was adopted by Council in 2012. It's considered appropriate that the SCI should be reviewed now in line with the forthcoming local plan review and update and to reflect changes in methods of communication and engagement. There's also a requirement under the Town and Country Planning Regulations that SCIs are reviewed every 5 years. The changes to the SCI review are set out at paragraph 2.2 in the report. The two key changes are increased recognition of more recent changes in the use of social media and seeking to ensure that the SCI reflects these and the flexibilities to deal with situations such as COVID-19. And potential administrative charging for long and complex submissions relating to consultation documents, where those submissions are not made directly into the consultation system but have to be processed by officers. This can be a time-consuming process which can cause delay to local plan progression. However, based on previous experience, it's anticipated that the vast majority of representations would not be affected by administrative charges, and certainly I'd be concerned if they were affected by administrative charges. I think we're talking about very unusual and time-consuming contributions here. We're not in any way setting up an obstacle to people to have their say. It's proposed that the Council will carry out a 6-week public consultation on the revised SCI. Responses to that consultation will be considered and any appropriate amendments made will then be reported to Cabinet and to full Council for adoption. So I move the recommendation in the report. Is there a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. That's seconded by Councillor Alban. Any discussion, members?
No.
Okay, we'll have further opportunity to talk about this in future, should people wish to. So is that agreed, members? Agreed. Not hearing any objections, so that's agreed. So we move on to item 6, which is your leisure. Get the right document open. And that's me again. So, obviously your leisure has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, as many other businesses and organisations across Thanet and across the country have. particularly in the leisure and entertainment industry. We're bringing this report now because we have a concern that if the council doesn't act, we could be faced with the prospect of some important local services having to cease operation. And this in turn could have far-reaching long-term effects, given the health inequalities we already see within our district. If Your Leisure were to go out of business, there will be significant financial implications for the council, and we can't avoid those, whether we were to take the services in-house, we were able to identify an alternative provider, or we simply allow the services to cease, because certainly I think the majority of their services, if not all of their services, are not statutory, but they are very desirable. So there is no risk-free option for the council. We do welcome and acknowledge the recent government financial support to the leisure sector. And indeed, Your Leisure have benefited from a number of the initiatives introduced by the government since last March. But because of its nature as an independent organisation, the council isn't able to obtain compensation for lost revenue in the way that it can from services that it delivers directly. And the latest financial support doesn't take account of the losses before December the 2nd, 2020. And clearly they've been in a difficult financial position since March. Indeed, Your Leisure's facilities and services were all required to close last March, and at that point their customer income ceased. And while some services have reopened since, and indeed closed again since, customer confidence remains low, and there is significant uncertainty still around when the latest national restrictions will lift, particularly as they affect Your Leisure. So what I can say is that council officers have worked closely with Your Leisure throughout the pandemic to understand the challenges that they've been facing. I personally have got confidence in the management's approach. One of the last things that happened before the lockdown actually was that Councillor Whitehead and I spent a morning going around the two leisure centres with Kevin Fordham. I can only say that we were very impressed with what we saw. So we do understand that this is the situation that Your Leisure finds itself in is caused by the issue which is affecting everything else. It's not because of anything that they've done wrong. And there's no suggestion that they were in trouble aside from the pandemic. I think that the council needs to show its support for this Thanet organisation. We need to help protect the jobs of the people who are employed there, many of whom are our residents, protect the services that we provide for our residents, and mitigate any risks to the council. And I think that this proposal in the report, the recommendations in the report do that. So I move the recommendations in the report. Is there a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
There's a competition for secondly. I think Councillor Duckworth probably won. Thank you. Yep. Okay, and I'm going to call in Councillor Pugh, who wants to speak on this item.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, I won't go over stuff that we've already discussed. We had quite an extensive members' briefing earlier this week, so I'd say that all members are quite aware of why we need to provide support to Your Leisure, and I think it's right that we're doing so. However, particularly in this report, it's listed that this is giving permission to yourself and to the officer to make a decision on this loan. I suppose my question is where will this end? And I understand that it's quite an open-ended question, but particularly with the council's finances being the way they are, and of course everyone is struggling at the moment, not least residents, and an uptick in an increase in council tax payments, I'm sure won't help them. But surely we can't be flogging a dead horse forever, and the council's own financial position needs to be taken into consideration. So perhaps you as leader may be able to tell me or not at this moment, but where will this end? Where will it be that the council will decide, rather than just keep handing over money, that we will need ourselves to walk away?
Well, Councillor Pugh, what I would say in response to that is that what's proposed is a loan. And clearly a loan is repayable, and it's a loan at the market rate. So this isn't just a question of the council handing over money. I do accept that within the current context that there are risks attached to that loan, but nevertheless it is a loan. And we have to measure that against the liabilities to which the council could be exposed if Your Leisure goes out of business. And as I think as outlined in the report, they are quite considerable. In response to the question of where it ends, I suppose I could equally well ask that question of Boris Johnson, because if we accept that the problem is driven entirely by the pandemic, and I think we do accept that across the council, the Prime Minister's unable to say when the pandemic's going to end. He's given us some hopeful dates, as he has in the past, and I hope this time he's going to be rather more accurate than he has been in the past. But it's a difficult question to answer. I'll give the Chief Executive the opportunity to make any comments you might want to make in response to your intervention.
Thank you, Leader. No, just to reiterate, I think it's quite clear from the report that this is not really a situation that any of us wanted to find ourselves in, including Your Leisure. I think it is critical that we support them at this time with this strategy, this financial strategy. And I think the leaders made it very clear at the end of the day, much as we do need to take into consideration the council's financial position and the risks associated with ongoing support for Your Leisure, but that has to be balanced against the risks that are very clear in the report that TDC faces anyway. There's no easy option here and there's no risk-free option. And I think on balance, our view is, and rightly, that this is the best approach. And at the end of the day, as a matter of principle, I think it's important the council continues to support community services, because we will come to an end in respect of this pandemic at some point. And I think when the restrictions on trading cease, these are some of the community services that are going to be really important going forward. So I think this is absolutely the right approach. But we have said in the report, and again, I think that's absolutely right, that we will review the position every 3 months. So we will keep that position under review. And as with all of these things, if any other decisions need to be made, then we will consult with members, talk to members about that, and review the strategy accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just probably like to add that throughout the last 10 months, and as the situation with Your Leisure has evolved, we have kept the 2 local MPs very closely informed and asked them to lobby government around the funding. And I think they've been supportive of that. I'd like to say that. And I know that Craig McKinley in particular has spoken to Your Leisure and looked at their financial position and is able to take a view on it. So I'm sure that if the council was acting unreasonably, then he would be well placed to assist you in pointing that out. And I don't speak for him, but I do say, you know, he's been very closely involved in the discussions that we've had. Okay, members of the Cabinet, any further comment on this item? No, and as Councillor Pugh said, we did discuss it at some length in a members' briefing on Tuesday. I think that was appropriate. I think it's also appropriate that this report, I mean, obviously there are decisions in it which do need to come into the public domain, but I think it's appropriate that this report was shared publicly. We've brought into the public domain some quite significant financial information, which could be uncomfortable for Your Leisure. And we wanted to be as transparent as we could, and also to make clear that we are standing behind this organisation because we believe it's important to Thanet and important to our residents and indeed the jobs of the people who work for Your Leisure. So, members, unless I hear any objections, I'm going to take the recommendations as agreed. Thank you. So that's agreed. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I declare the meeting closed at 5:49. Thank you to everyone who's participated and to those watching from home. The live stream of the meeting will now end, and thank you to members and officers for their time. Good night.
Cheers.